Thanks for joining us for another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement. I'm here at the News Forum where all voices matter. Our guest today is Goran Samuel Pesic. He is the chairman of the Policy Insights Forum. The forum recently hosted a successful event in Ottawa concerning national security, and we'll be learning all about it. Welcome to Boom and Bust.
Thanks very much, Tony. I appreciate being on the show today.
Yeah, no, it's our pleasure. First of all, tell us a little bit more about this Policy Insights Forum.
Thanks very much. We started the Policy Insights Forum about 4 years ago, just around the time of COVID. There was a lot of work that was being done in advance through some of our business units, primarily Samuel Associates, which was our company. Then we realized we had a lot of material to spin off an independent think tank and add to the voices here in Ottawa. So in about 2020, we engaged in this, new adventure of bringing together a new platform to talk about strategic over-the-horizon policy issues that matter to Canada. I know a lot of think tanks deal with the immediacy of the issue of the day and tomorrow perhaps, but we thought maybe we would develop a think tank that would think of issues that are going to affect Canadians 5, 10, 20 years down the road. So in 2020, we decided to embark upon that.
And how's it going? What sort of reach do you have?
So we've made reach with initial support from the Government of Canada and NATO. We started to develop programming aimed at the private sector. And in doing so, we have developed programming that essentially is, if you will, leaning into the private sector, leaning into government to provide a voice on topics of defense, national security, the environment, and a whole host of other issues. What makes us a little bit different is that we're very nimble and we're able to respond in real time to real issues. So for example, this national security conference we just held is a case in point where about 6 months ago, we decided that this topic had very little visibility here in Ottawa and that we would assemble leaders from the government, former senior officials, industry, academia, and bring them together. And ironically, around the same time as we did our conference, a lot of activity here on the Hill has been happening, primarily due to the foreign interference, commission that has been set up. So it was a fortuitous timing in that regard.
Right. No, I was going to say your timing is absolutely impeccable. Yeah, exactly. Please let us know what the highlights were.
Well, the highlights of the conference were interesting. I would say resounding, not just from participants, but certainly from keynote speakers and other eminent guests. We have a national security culture that is lacking in Canada. And this national security culture, which is very strong in the United States and certainly our Five Eye partners, is very much absent to some extent. And I guess over the last few years, we've noticed that even more and more. So some of the discussions around the experts table that we had highlighted Canada as a need to increase our national security posture, develop a culture of political leadership for national security issues, and keep it at the front table. So national security is something that's not an option, but it has to be seen as a necessity in all the government's activities going forward, including work with the private sector. We even had New Brunswick Premier Higgs on the segment talking about the need to have provinces involved at the national security table in addition to the private sector.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say, that this national security gap that we have. Is it just the politicians that need to be more engaged, or is it generally the whole sector in Canada?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think if you look at the last policy that was developed under the Martin government in 2004 was 20 years ago exactly. And in fact, I came up here to Ottawa, I should say, as a student from the University of Toronto to participate at the unveiling of the 24 national security policy. At that time, it was really in response to 9/11 events. Right. 20 years later, much of 9/11 has somewhat wound down, and other threats are on the horizon. The war in the Ukraine started 10 years ago. And of course, now we see the second invasion of the Ukraine from Russia just a few years ago, and many other geopolitical tensions that are gripping this region around the world, and certainly Canada is not immune from it.
We're going to take a brief break, Goran. We'll be back with you after these messages. Please stay with us.